Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Dear friends, we have a very interesting guest today at the print office, Mr. Rajesh Jain. Rajesh needs no introduction. Everybody knows him as the man who was behind Mr. Modi's advent to Racecourse Road. The Mission 272, we are all aware of that. But now Mr. Modi has moved on, you have moved on, you are working on new things. So we are going to talk to him about what he is up to, what he thinks about India's future, about Mr. Modi, about politics in general. And I'm sure it will be a very interesting conversation that we have. So Rajesh, if I can ask you, Mr. Modi is going to face a very, very crucial election. I think one of his toughest in the next 6 months. So how do you think the ongoing election campaign will have an impact on 2019?
See, I think the way we've got to look at this is that the elections in 5 to 6 months, the conventional wisdom is that the BJP will basically lose perhaps anywhere from 80 to 100 seats at this point of time. Then it will be very hard for them to replicate almost the near clean sweep that they had in the north and the west from what we are seeing in some of the state elections. The very fact that some of the state elections are close elections will have an impact on the number of Lok Sabha seats that they will get. So the question to really ask is not what number of seats will BJP get or whether it's going to be 180, 200, whatever be the number. I think what will BJP, Narendra Modi and Amit Shah do to get to 250 to 300 seats, because that is what will cement his position in history. And Modi, of course, as we all know from 2002 in Gujarat, has never lost an election.
But getting to 250 plus in the current environment, it seems a bit difficult. How do you think Mr. Modi is planning to get to 250 plus?
So I think the way things are going right now, it doesn't seem easy for them to get to 250, 300, which also they also know it. So the question to think is, what are the nuclear options which can be used or which can be done in the next 4 to 5 months to get them past this 250, 300 figure? I would say target 300. And I think these options are, so they are not the conventional options. They've got to be big, bold ideas which really transform the election from a summation of state elections into a national wave. In a way, replicate 2014, which is difficult. And I think there are 3 possible paths which can be taken here. And I'm leaving aside the small things which obviously are natural to and fro in a campaign. The first is that Modi, I think, will consolidate his positions with the poor. And that can be done through a large cash handout. And I think that's what perhaps, according to me, some of the RBI discussion was of getting maybe 1 or 2 lakh crores. So the 10 crore families, which have already been identified in Ayushman Bharat, can be each given 10 to 20,000 rupees or promised and given after the election. That is one approach. So you're augmenting the relationship with the poor, and 10 crore effectively means 40 crore, 10 crore families means 40 crore votes. The second, which people have talked about, is basically unity at the Hindu level. So BJP is of course the natural party on the community level, at the Hindu level. So what is it that they can do? The obvious ones are of course something with Ayodhya or what, but the question to think is, what is it that can be done there? And the third is unity at the country level, because you need to make it into a wave. Okay, it's not about caste and sub-segments, etc. So it's not just about one state, you got to make it national. So that is where I think we've got to think. Country level I think is harder because people talk about, Pakistan, etc., those types of things. But I think Pakistan today is effectively a Chinese protectorate. So you can't just do anything with Pakistan and assume China will not intervene. And Imran Khan will not want his first year in office to be sullied with an adventure against India.
So, but do you think if Mr. Modi gets to 250 plus, will it be a strong government? Will it be the Modi that we know who wants to get his way in and who wants to just walk into a room and claim that room?
See, if you look back at the last 4.5 years that we've had, see, every prime minister basically likes to leave a legacy. So if you look at sort of Vajpayee, when someone says Vajpayee, what are the things you think about? You think of the roads, you think of disinvestment, people talk about these things. So what will Modi effectively in his term be remembered for? I think today, unfortunately, the first word which comes to mind is basically Notbandi, and which now after 2 years people have realized that it was a misadventure. There is pain. We are seeing this feedback from the ground level, which has been there in the elections also, and of course economically it has been devastating, which many experts had said some experts had said at the time it happened. On the other side, there is of course IBC, which has happened, which is a very positive development. GST, overall positive, but implementation left a lot to be desired out there, and I think the tax rates still are, I think, substantially high. They should be they could be brought down as we go along. Some of the structural reforms that were required for the country to leap past its 7% sort of growth rate into a different league, because that is what's going to lead to job creation. That's what's going to lead to the stress in the farm sector being solved, because those are two big stresses which are now coming out to the fore in the state elections. So this is the sort of legacy that is there, the structural reform sort of not done, I think, in education, in land, in labor, in agriculture, in multiple sectors, admin reforms, judicial reforms, a lot of these are undone. So I think what he will probably want to look at the second term, of course if he gets 250, 300 plus, is not a government of more yojnas, okay, but can it become a Samriddhi ki sarkar? And this is what can set Modi apart. For 70 years, India has really struggled with prosperity. I mean, other nations which were at the same level as India have become wealthy. Look at South Korea, look at China, look at Singapore. India is rich, but Indians are poor. How can we change this? This whole perpetually planned poverty, PPP, needs to be changed. So, how can he leave a legacy of prosperity? So the second term, I think he will want to make it substantially different from the first term.
But there are many, including his critics, some, I call them so-called liberals in this country, who say if were Mr. Modi to come back to power in 2019, India as we know will cease to exist. It will be, something totally different, something that the founding fathers of India, our constitution makers never thought India would be. Do you agree with that?
See, whichever way you look at it, India has to change. The current scenario cannot go on. We need to create crores of jobs a year. We need to fundamentally address the agricultural stress. Loan waivers are not the solution. You have young people today, when you travel across rural India, you have young people standing at chaurahas during the day. That's the sort of abiding memory that you carry away. And these are very serious, they have serious ramifications on the social side. I mean, farmers' marches that we have seen, there is pain. I mean, for them to take the time out and do this, there is pain that is there across the various sectors. So I think India has to change. Now, there are two levels, I think, at which the changes need to be done. One is at how do you make Indians rich? How do you get past our divisions that are there? Today, all the speeches in the campaigns, all the discussion is about, caste and community and the last 70 years sort of legacy. I think the fundamental question which should be answered by Modi, by the people of India, because politicians also cater to demand, is Mandir Vapasi ya Dhan Vapasi? That's, I think, the core of the issue.
In fact, Dhan Vapsi is something you have been talking about. Could you explain it to our viewers? What do you mean? What is that concept,
See, India is a rich country. I mean, we've estimated that the surplus Indian wealth in India across public lands, across minerals, across the PSUs and their assets, comes to 1500 lakh crores. 15 followed by 14 zeros. 50 lakh rupees per family. And it is a tragedy that you have 12 crore Indian families with an monthly income of less than 10,000 rupees. I mean, we are losing, education, etc. These are productive people. There's nothing genetically wrong with Indians that we should be poor or we are inferior. The same Indians, you take them abroad, they will do extraordinarily well. So this has to change. And my belief is that this wealth should be returned back to the people. It is the people's wealth. The government is just a controller right now. and they are not doing the right thing by controlling all of this wealth. Give this wealth back to people at 1 lakh rupees a year, and they can then craft their own path to prosperity. And for this is really the Samriddhi Kranti that we need. Jayaprakash Narayanji had basically talked about Sampurna Kranti in the 1970s. I think the time has come for Indians to unite and say for the next 5 to 25 years, our single focus should be how do we make Indians rich? How do we make Indians free from the clutches of the politicians and bureaucrats who are deciding, oh, you should get this scheme, you should get that scheme, you are not eligible for that other scheme. Give every family 1 lakh rupees a year. It is their right. It is morally the right thing to do. It is economically efficient. Government holding on to this money is theft. It is not right. And if we can do that, we will unleash a generation of prosperity. And that will completely transform India. This is really what we need. This is what Dhan Vapasi is about.
But would that also entail changing the way our politics is conducted right now? Political parties and most of the decisions flow down from Delhi onwards. So do you want or do you suggest a change in how our politics is conducted?
Absolutely. Because the current political parties will not want to bring about the change. They benefit from the current system. In India, we do not have sort of democracy. Democracy is of, for, by the people. What we have is a perversion of that. Democracy is of the political parties, by the political parties, for their bosses, for the political party bosses. What we have ended up in India over the last 70 years is a kakistocracy. It's a government of the most corrupt and the least competent. This cannot go on because we have a young population which wants opportunities in life, and you can't deny them these rights. Prosperity has to become a right. To make this change, what we need to do is a bottom-up movement where you need to be, and this is what I'm working on, creating an Uber for politics. It's a bottom-up at the grassroots level. We people, we as voters, should be able to select our own candidates, not some high command deciding who the candidate in your area should be. So a candidate, the MP, MLA candidate has no accountability.
Something like the US primaries.
US primaries, exactly right. In Parliament, in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the MPs who are going there have no voice of their own. A party whip basically forces them to vote in a certain way. They have become administrators of MP-led funds rather than the architects of a representative or the champions of a representative democracy this country needs. Jayaprakash Narayan also called, Rajaji had talked about a party-less government, and what they meant is that you have people who think independently in the Lok Sabha on almost all issues. Okay, finance, budget and no confidence motions can be voted as per the whip, but on other matters, then you have genuine debate. This is what we need, and my movement is about A, return of the public wealth, and B, return of the democratic voice, of the people's voice back to them.
But if I can just ask you, isn't this the Uber model that you are talking about? Isn't this what what was the premise between the setting up of the Aam Aadmi Party? Arvind Kejriwal and his people, when they set up, they talked about precisely this, that people will get to select their candidate, and then the same people will go on to vote for those candidates. But it is now as good or as bad as any other political party. In Punjab, we have seen almost the entire unit has walked out. In Delhi, we see murmurs. We had Yogendra Yadav and Mr. Prashant Bhushan walk out of the party or get thrown out, depending on which side you are. On this, precisely this issue, they said that Kejriwal and his people, they are controlling the party. It is just like any other party. So why do you think that what you want now, the Uber model, will succeed where other attempts have failed?
Yeah, so there are two reasons why they have failed and why I think our approach can succeed. The first is how are candidates selected. So it's the electoral college. Okay, in most of these parties, Congress also tried primaries, AAP tried primaries. The electoral college was very small, 50 people, 100 people who will decide. So once you start rigging these people's votes, you can basically decide what the outcome will be. What if you had, in a typical constituency, you had 2 lakh, 3 lakh people, members of this new type of party, essentially deciding who they will vote for? That is where you get real democracy. So it's not No one can rig this. No one can decide how 2 lakh people can basically think. That's what we want to be able to do. And the second way is, the way to make this happen is through technology. The game changer in the last 5 years has really been that everyone now has a smartphone in their hands, or every family at least has one. Most people in India over 18 a lot of people have phones with them. How do you rethink India's democracy where people have phones? We've thought of every other area, how we eat, how we move from one place to another place, how we shop, how we get ourselves entertained. All that has changed. But politics has remained pretty much the same way. So that is where the combination of these 3 themes, the economic theme, that wealth should go back to people, that creates the path to prosperity. The political thing, where people basically have the right or should be able to choose their own candidates. And this made possible by technology. And there's one more very important element in this. Maneesh, did you know that out of the 100 crore eligible voters in India, 70 crore, more than 2/3, are not aligned to any political party? BJP's core support base in the country is 15 crore out of 100 crore. Congress and regional parties put together is 15 crore. That is what is really deciding who comes to power. It's a small minority. The other 70 crore fall into 4 categories. 30 crore people are not coming out to vote on election day. 10 crore people are over 18, not registered. 15 crore people are wasting their vote on small parties, candidates who have no hope of winning. Another 15 crore people, not loyal, deciding how the hawa is before the election or who's paying them money, the highest bidder as it were, and deciding to vote for that. Now what we are saying is technology and Uber for politics can basically bring all of this together. That is what our aim is in Dhanvapasi.
Sir, Rajesh, you know Mr. Modi, how he works, how his mind works. What do you think is going on in his mind, considering that many people actually think that the BJP could go on to win at least 2 states in the ongoing elections? What do you think is going on in his mind right now, 6 months before his next big test?
See, I think, I can't say I can speak for him, but see, I think Mr. Modi's aim will be, I'm assuming, as any leader will be, how do I win the next election? That's, I think, the next sort of roadmap, next milestone, which is there in front of him. And I think what has happened, unfortunately for him, is that because of some of the structural changes which were not done in the first, I would say, few months, and there were missed opportunities. I mean, look back at 2014. We had oil at $40 and it crashed from 130. We had a mandate of 272 plus. The first time we had a majority in almost in 30 years. 30 years. You had a leader who could basically persuade the country on anything. This is once in a generation opportunity. And that was, I think, the moment in time where the real changes that India needed had to be done. And I think if we had done that, we would have solved our Hamesha problems of poverty, unemployment, corruption. You would have got a limited government, you would have got a better rule of law. These are the standard elements which really create prosperity. That's what should have been done. Now, that having not been done, okay, because I think the mistake we really made in India was, there was continuity of the past. See, essentially if you think now, Congress and BJP, there are same to same. Congress has basically adopted the BJP's cow and Hindutva and BJP has fallen for all the failed economic policies of the Congress of subsidies and one scheme after another scheme. India needed to make a clean break. This anti-prosperity machine had to be crushed.
So is this NDA 2 UPA 3?
I think it's very hard because everyone has their own sort of things. The problem really is, for me, every one of this is a continuation of really the anti-prosperity machine that has been running in India since independence. That is what which needs to be broken. Now, the question which you had asked is, what will Modi be thinking? I think election at the end of the day is a competitive decision that people have to make. Okay, so it's a choice. And right now, I think there is a limited choice that people have really between the BJP and the Congress. And the reality is that people are not excited with the BJP. They tend to not to see the Congress as the possible alternative to them. I think Modi's challenge in the next 4 months will be to really lay out a roadmap for his second term. Okay, he has to talk about how, and I think he has to put this theme around prosperity, because all the other paths which are there will not leave the legacy that I think he will want to leave going forward in a second term.
But you know, we have spoken about Modi at 250, let's say. But what if Mr. Modi manages to get 300? They are, in all likelihood, they are going to, actually they are on their way to an absolute majority in the Rajya Sabha because of the states. In the next a year or so, they will be there. So what if they have an absolute majority in the Lok Sabha also?
I think very interesting question. I've thought about this, that for the first time, I think since say 71, a party will have the ability to change India's constitution. Okay, BJP at 300 plus, you need 2/3 in the Lok Sabha. With support of allies, they can easily get that. If they get, of course, 300 plus. They will have, by control of the states, they will have a 2/3 majority in the Rajya Sabha, and they will control half the states. That's really what is required. And if you go back, NDA 1 had actually set up a constitution commission,
the Venkat
Chalaiya Commission, to actually look at what changes need to be made. Now, they would have to be thinking about some of these things, because see, according to me, the root of India's problem basically goes back to the rules which are embedded in the constitution. We are keeping on changing rulers. Unless we change the rules, we have a problem. Now, what are the problems in the constitution? 242 out of 395 articles in the Indian constitution were picked up verbatim from the 1935 Government of India Act, which was written by a colonial power to rule over India. What the constitution has done is made the people subservient to the government. It should exactly be the opposite. People have to be the principals. The government is an agent of the people. The relationship has to be flipped. The constitution mandates deep involvement in the economy. The constitution forces discrimination at all levels. So I think if we think along these lines, I think there's an interesting opportunity which is there to create a constitution for a free and prosperous India.
Rajesh, one last question before we end this. You have spoken about Modi, you understand the BJP. But if I were to ask you, what would your 1 or 2 advice to Rahul Gandhi would be if he wants to take on Modi more effectively?
I think it has to be economy.
Not Hindutva, not
absolutely not. Today, I think the pain that is there, and this is the missed opportunity which was there, is around economic issues. It is around the failed promise of prosperity, I think. Of course, Rahul Gandhi's Congress has been instrumental in creating an India where we are all 1/10 wealthier than we should have been in the last 70 years. So that is, I think, one of the problems, legacy issues which he has. But it has to be around the economy. He has to go out and talk of a plan for how will he make Indians prosperous, how will jobs get created, how will we really grow, because that is what is required out here. How will Indians basically create a country which is economically strong, because out from there is where you will be able to take on the likes of China, etc. I mean, it's your economic strength which really lets you take on other countries. It's not anything else. So it has to be, his focus will have to be around the economy. I think the other thing which he would probably end up doing, which I think some of them are starting to do now, is to talk about the promises made and unkept. So that is another possible theme that is there for the Congress, and I have written about some of these things earlier. Basically, what the Congress, I think most important for the Congress actually is to create a ground operation to match the BJP's. This is, I think, the single most important thing. See, an election is a very simple thing. On election day, you need to get A, your supporters out to vote. B, just before the election, you should have persuaded the undecided ones to vote for you. And C, make sure you're not getting the other party's supporters out to vote in your own way.
Yeah.
So that's it. You can do anything else before that, but it's a ground operation on election day. And that's where technology, data, all of it, and I think they're starting to do some of that, will make a difference. That's what I would suggest.
It was very nice of you to talk to us, Rajesh, and very exciting talk that we had here. So keep watching The Print, and we are going to bring you more guests like Rajesh, and I'm sure you'll watch this and be as excited about watching this as I was interviewing Rajesh. Thank you once again, Rajesh.